An abandoned patrol car hidden beneath an overpass. A cryptic message that sat untouched for 16 years. And a discovery that would expose a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of law enforcement. What a long-haul trucker found on that foggy March morning in 2003 would unravel a web of corruption, betrayal, and murder that had been buried along America's most traveled highway for over a decade. If you're into gripping true stories that twist and turn until the final moment hits, like, subscribe, and smash that notification bell so you never miss a case that powerful people tried to erase from history. Now let's rewind to a cold February night in 1987, when Officer Michael "Mick" Rodriguez made what should have been a routine traffic stop on Interstate 95. He never made it home that night, and what happened next would remain hidden until one trucker's curiosity changed everything. February 18, 1987, 11:47 p.m. The temperature had dropped to 23 degrees Fahrenheit, and a light snow was beginning to dust the asphalt of I-95 near the Virginia-North Carolina border. Officer Michael Rodriguez, badge number 2047, was completing his final patrol of the night shift when his radio crackled to life. Unit 2847, we've got reports of an erratic driver, dark sedan, southbound, near mile marker 73. Possible DUI, can you intercept? Rodriguez's voice came through clear and confident. Copy that. Dispatch. I've got visual on the vehicle now. Initiating traffic stop. Those were the last words anyone would hear from Officer Michael Rodriguez for 16 years. Rodriguez was a 10-year veteran of the Virginia State Police, known for his meticulous attention to detail and his unwavering integrity. At 34 years old, he had a wife, Sarah, and twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, who were just 7 years old. His colleagues described him as the kind of officer who would never walk away from his duty, never abandon his post, and certainly never disappear without a trace. But that's exactly what happened. When Rodriguez failed to check in at the end of his shift, dispatch tried raising him on the radio. Nothing. His patrol car's GPS tracker showed his last known location at mile marker 73, but when backup units arrived at 2:15 a.m., they found nothing. No patrol car, no skid marks, no signs of a struggle, just empty highway stretching into the darkness. The initial investigation was led by Captain James Morrison, a 22-year veteran who had worked alongside Rodriguez for nearly a decade. Morrison organized search teams that combed both sides of the interstate for miles in each direction. They dragged nearby ponds, searched abandoned buildings, and interviewed every trucker and motorist who had passed through the area that night. But Rodriguez had simply vanished. The official report, filed 3 weeks later, listed Officer Michael Rodriguez as missing under suspicious circumstances. The case remained active for 6 months, before being transferred to the Cold Case Division. Sarah Rodriguez received her husband's pension, and the Virginia State Police moved on to other investigations. But what they didn't know was that Rodriguez hadn't disappeared that night. He had discovered something that certain powerful people would kill to keep buried. March 12, 2003. 4:23 a.m. Long-haul trucker Danny Roadhawk Williams was making his weekly run from Atlanta to Baltimore when his CB radio started picking up chatter about unusual weather conditions ahead. Williams had been driving these routes for over 20 years, and he knew every rest stop, every way station, and every hidden spot where drivers could pull over for a quick break. That's why he immediately noticed the vehicle tucked beneath the Route 301 overpass, near mile markers. It wasn't supposed to be there, Williams would later tell investigators. I've driven past that spot 1,000 times, and there's never been anything under that bridge, except maybe some homeless camps in the summer. Williams pulled his rig over and activated his hazard light. What he found would reopen a case that had been cold for over a decade and expose a conspiracy that reached far beyond one missing officer. The vehicle was a 1986 Ford Crown Victoria, the standard patrol car used by Virginia State Police in the late 1980s. But this wasn't just any patrol car. The license plate, though faded and partially obscured by rust, was still legible, VSP20. The interior was covered in dust and debris, but remarkably well preserved considering it had been exposed to the elements for 16 years. The radio had been torn out, wires hanging loose from the dashboard. The odometer showed 80, but it was what Williams found in the glove compartment that would change everything. Wrapped in multiple layers of plastic and sealed with electrical tape was a small digital voice recorder, the kind used by journalists and investigators in the late. Attached to it was a handwritten note on official Virginia State Police letterhead. If you're reading this, they found me first. The recorder contains everything you need to know about Operation Highway. Give it to Sarah. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't come home. Tell Emma and Sophie their daddy was trying to do the right thing. Don't trust Morrison. He's been dirty since '85. MR badge, 28047. William's hands shook as he pressed play on the record. The digital recorder contained 47 minutes of audio recorded between February 15th and February 18th, 1987. What it revealed would shock investigators and expose a drug trafficking operation that had been using police resources to move narcotics up and down the East Coast for over a decade. The first entry was dated February 15th, just 3 days before Rodriguez's disappearance. This is Officer Michael Rodriguez, badge 2847. I'm making this recording because I believe my life may be in danger. For the past 6 months I've been noticing irregularities in patrol assignments and vehicle usage logs. Certain officers are being assigned to specific routes at specific times, always involving Interstate 95 between Richmond and the North Carolina border. Rodriguez's voice was calm but tense, speaking in the measured tones of someone who knew he was documenting something dangerous. Last week, I followed Officer Travis Blackwood on what was supposed to be a routine patrol. Instead of following his assigned route, Blackwood drove to an abandoned warehouse complex. Off route, I observed him meeting with 3 individuals in civilian clothes and a semi-truck with no visible license plates. They transferred several large boxes from the truck to Blackwood's patrol car. The recording paused, and when Rodriguez continued, his voice was heavier with the weight of what he had discovered. I ran the warehouse property through county records. It's owned by a shell company called Atlantic Maritime Holding. The same company name appears on the registration documents for 12 vehicles currently in the Virginia State Police fleet. Someone has been using our department as cover for a major trafficking operation, but Rodriguez wasn't done. The second entry recorded on February 16th revealed the scope of the conspiracy. I've confirmed that at least 6 officers in our district are involved, including 2 sergeants and 1 lieutenant. They've been using patrol cars to escort drug shipments, providing police protection for traffickers moving product from Florida to New York. The operation is sophisticated. They have fake shipping manifests, legitimate-looking business fronts, and most importantly, they have protection from within the department. Rodriguez then named Captain James Morrison, the same man who would later lead the investigation into Rodriguez's disappearance, was identified as the operations coordinator within the state police. Lieutenant Sharon Hayes was managing the money laundering through a series of fake consulting contracts. Sergeant Mark Chen was recruiting new officers into the operation, but the most shocking revelation came in the final entry, recorded just hours before Rodriguez's disappearance. I've made copies of shipping records, financial documents and surveillance photos. I was planning to turn everything over to the FBI field office in Richmond tomorrow morning. But Morrison called me into his office today. He knows I know. He offered me $50,000 to forget what I think I saw and take a transfer to a desk job in North. When I refused, he told me I was making a very dangerous mistake. Rodriguez's voice became urgent, almost frantic. I'm going to hide these recordings and copies of the evidence. If something happens to me, I need Sarah to know the truth. The evidence is buried behind our house, under the oak tree where I built Emma and Sophie's swing set. The combination to the safety deposit box is Sarah's birthday, box 447 at First National Bank of Richmond. The recording ended with sounds of Rodriguez's radio crackling to life, dispatch calling about the erratic driver near mile marker 7, then silence. But Rodriguez had been smart enough to hide more than just the record. When trucker Danny Williams turned over the recorder and Rodriguez's note to Virginia State Police, he had no way of knowing that he was handing evidence to the very department that had orchestrated Rodriguez's disappearance. Fortunately, Sarah Rodriguez had remarried and moved to North Carolina years earlier, and Williams was able to contact her directly through mutual friends in the trucking community. Sarah Rodriguez, now Sarah Mitchell, had never fully accepted the official explanation of her first husband's disappearance. When she heard the recording, everything suddenly made sense. The strange phone calls in the weeks before Michael vanished, his increasing paranoia about work, the way he had started coming home at odd hours, always checking to make sure he wasn't being followed. Michael was scared, Sarah would later tell investigators. He kept saying he had stumbled onto something big, something that could destroy people's careers and send them to prison for life. But I thought he was just being paranoid. I thought the stress of police work was getting to him. Following her husband's instructions, Sarah went to the oak tree behind their old house in Richmond, which was now owned by a different family. With their permission, she began digging 3 feet down, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic and sealed in a waterproof container. She found everything Rodriguez had promised. The cash companies, bank records showing payments from Atlantic Maritime to Virginia State Police officers' personal accounts, surveillance photographs of police officers meeting with known drug traffickers, a list of at least 15 officers across 3 different precincts who were involved in operation. Financial records showing over $2.3 million in drug money had been laundered through legitimate businesses between 1985 and 1987, but most damning of all was a handwritten ledger in Captain Morrison's distinctive handwriting, detailing payment schedules, delivery, and a chilling entry dated February 17, 1987. MR problem. Permanent solution required. Sarah immediately contacted the FBI, bypassing the Virginia State Police entirely. Federal agents descended on Richmond, armed with warrants and 16 years of cold anger over a cover-up that had hidden a cop killer and allowed a criminal enterprise to continue operating. What they found would expose corruption that reached far beyond Virginia's borders. The FBI investigation, codenamed Operation Lost Highway, revealed that Rodriguez had uncovered just one branch of a massive criminal enterprise that had been operating along the I-95 corridor since the early 1980s. Atlantic Maritime Holdings was connected to a network of shell companies that stretched from Miami to Boston, all designed to provide legitimate cover for one of the largest drug trafficking operations in U.S. history. The operation worked like this. Drug shipments would be loaded onto trucks in South Florida and driven north along I-95. At predetermined points, the trucks would be met by police officers who would either escort them through potential trouble spots or transfer the drugs to patrol cars for the final leg of the journey. Police vehicles, after all, were rarely searched or stopped by other law enforcement agencies. Captain Morrison had been recruiting officers into the operation since 1985, targeting those with financial problems or personal issues that made them vulnerable to corruption. Officers were paid between $5,000 and $25,000 per month, depending on their level of involvement. The money was laundered through fake consulting companies and legitimate businesses owned by the traffickers. By 1987, the operation was moving over 500 kilograms of cocaine and 200 kilograms of heroin per month, through Virginia alone. Similar operations were running in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, all coordinated by the same criminal organization. But Rodriguez's investigation had threatened to bring it all down. FBI wiretaps of Morrison's phone, obtained after Rodriguez's evidence surfaced, revealed what had really happened on February 18, 1987. Morrison had used the fake DUI call to lure Rodriguez to mile marker 73, where several members of the trafficking organization were waiting. Rodriguez was forced off the road, kidnapped, and murdered. His body was never found, but intercepted communications suggested it was disposed of in the Chesapeake Bay. Rodriguez's patrol car was initially hidden in a warehouse owned by Atlantic Maritime Holdings, but as the years passed and the heat from the investigation died down, the car became a liability. In 2003, with the original case file sealed and Rodriguez officially listed as a missing person, Morrison made the decision to dump the car where it would eventually be found, believing that 16 years later, there would be no evidence left to threaten the operation. The arrests began on March 30, 2003, exactly 18 days after Danny Williams discovered Rodriguez's patrol car. Federal agents simultaneously raided dozens of locations across 5 states, arresting 47 individuals including 23 current and former law enforcement officers. Captain James Morrison was arrested at his home in Richmond at 6 a.m. FBI agents found over $400,000 in cash, hidden in his basement, along with documents proving his leadership role in the trafficking operation. He was charged with conspiracy to distribute narcotics, murder in furtherance of a criminal enterprise, and violation of civil rights under color of law. Lieutenant Sharon Hayes was found dead in her car outside a motel in Tennessee, an apparent suicide. A note left behind confessed to her role in laundering drug money and expressed remorse for Rodriguez's murder, though she claimed she hadn't known Morrison planned to kill him. Sergeant Mark Chen attempted to flee to Mexico but was arrested at the border. He eventually agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing crucial testimony about the operation's structure and confirming the details Rodriguez had uncovered. But perhaps the most shocking arrest was that of Judge William Hartford, a respected federal judge who had been dismissing drug cases and reducing sentences for defendants connected to the trafficking operation. Hartford had been receiving monthly payments of $25,000 since 1984 and had helped the organization avoid prosecution for nearly 2 decades. The trials lasted over 2 years. Morrison was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole. 12 other officers received sentences ranging from 15 to 35 years. The judge received 25 years and was permanently disbarred. The trafficking organization itself was dismantled, but investigators estimated that during its nearly 20-year operation, it had moved over $500 million worth of drugs through the I-95 corridor and corrupted dozens of law enforcement officials across multiple states. Officer Michael Rodriguez was posthumously awarded the Virginia State Police Medal of Valor, the department's highest honor. His name was added to the state's memorial wall for officers killed in the line of duty, and a section of I-95 near mile marker 73 was designated as the Michael Rodriguez Memorial Highway. Sarah Rodriguez Mitchell established a foundation in her first husband's name that provides college scholarships for children of law enforcement officers and supports families of officers killed in the line of duty. Emma and Sophie Rodriguez, who were 7 years old when their father disappeared, both became federal law enforcement officers themselves, continuing their father's fight against corruption and organized crime. Danny Williams, the trucker who found Rodriguez's patrol car, was awarded a $50,000 reward from the FBI for his role in breaking the case. He used the money to establish a truckers' assistance fund for drivers who report criminal activity they observe on the highway. The abandoned warehouse where Rodriguez first observed the drug transfers was purchased by the state of Virginia and converted into a training facility for law enforcement officers, with a special emphasis on recognizing and reporting corruption within police departments. But questions remain. Investigators believe the I-95 trafficking operation was just one part of a much larger criminal enterprise that may have had connections to other major drug trafficking organizations. Several suspects fled the country before they could be arrested, and millions of dollars in drug proceeds were never recovered. Most troubling of all, Rodriguez's body was never found. Despite extensive searches of the Chesapeake Bay and surrounding areas, Michael Rodriguez's final resting place remains unknown. His family continues to hope that someday they will be able to bring him home and give him the burial he deserves. The Rodriguez case led to major reforms in how missing officer cases are investigated, with new protocols requiring outside agencies to take over investigations when corruption is suspected. The FBI established a new unit specifically focused on investigating corruption within state and local law enforcement agencies. But perhaps the most important legacy of Michael Rodriguez's sacrifice is the reminder that there are still honest cops willing to risk everything to do what's right, even when that means standing up to corruption within their own departments. As we close this case, several questions continue to haunt investigators and Rodriguez's family. Was the timing of the car's discovery in 2003 truly coincidental, or was someone sending a message? Some investigators believe Morrison may have been planning to flee the country and dump the car as a final act of defiance, knowing it would eventually lead to his arrest, but wanting to control the narrative one last time. How many other officers knew about Rodriguez's investigation but remained silent? Phone records and financial investigations suggested that the corruption went deeper than even Rodriguez realized, potentially involving officers in multiple states who were never identified or prosecuted. Where is Michael Rodriguez buried? This question torments his family most of all. Several convicted members of the trafficking organization have claimed to know the location of Rodriguez's body, but none of their information has led to its recovery. Some investigators believe Rodriguez may have been buried at sea, making recovery impossible. Are there other Michael Rodriguez's out there? Officers who discovered corruption, tried to report it, and simply disappeared. The Rodriguez case has inspired new investigations into dozens of unsolved missing officer cases from the 1980s and 1990s. And several have been reclassified as potential homicides. What do you think happened in those final moments? On February 8, did Rodriguez know he was walking into a trap, or did he believe he was conducting a routine traffic stop? Did he have time to realize that his own captain had betrayed him, or did death come too quickly for that final terrible understanding? And perhaps most importantly, how many other corridors of corruption exist within American law enforcement? waiting for another brave officer to shine a light into the darkness. The Michael Rodriguez case reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear badges, carry service weapons, and make the ultimate sacrifice to protect and serve their communities. Rodriguez paid the highest price for his integrity, but his courage ensured that justice, though delayed by 16 years, would eventually prevail. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another case of justice delayed, but not denied. And remember, sometimes the truth stays buried for decades, but it never really dies. It just waits for the right person to dig it up. Because somewhere out there, on another lonely stretch of highway, another officer might be discovering something they weren't supposed to see. And when they do, they'll need to decide whether to stay silent or follow in Michael Rodriguez's footsteps, knowing that the truth sometimes demands everything we have to give. The highway remembers, the truth endures, and heroes like Michael Rodriguez never really disappear. They just wait for their stories to be told.